good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We actually made it. I wasn't sure if the server is gonna be up on time, but it ended up to be perfect, like right before 5 p.m. So here we are. Alright, guys. Uh, I'm gonna get busy soon, as in I won't be able to like stream around this hour anymore. From today onwards. Maybe on my off days I'll be able to. Shouldn't be a problem. But starting tomorrow, I'm starting a new job and it's going to take up a bit of my time. And yeah, I think I probably have. I'll probably be doing a lot more like evening streams. I think. So just to celebrate me, I'm going off to work tomorrow. I'm also trying to ease my anxiety about the whole fucking thing. Uh, I'm gonna read because that's what calms me down the most. Um, alright, guys. Okay, no joke. It's been difficult, okay? And I would like to take this time to thank all of you who has been following me, with either you are on YouTube or you are on Twitch. I would like to thank all of you for your support in the past 3 years. Uh, I wish that I had streamed a lot more during this time, this past 3 years, but it's difficult. Okay, I have a lot of excuses, but I'm not gonna list all of them here. But anyway, I do have a reclear scheduled at 9, which is about 3 hours from now. Sorry, 4 hours from now. So I'm gonna try my best to read part 3 to you guys today, and only part 3 of Kazuo Ishiguro's Klara and the Sun, because part 3 is pretty long. Part 4 is the longest part, and I'm not sure, like, it's gonna be part 3, part 4, and then part 5 and part 6 together. So in total there will be 4 streams for Klara and the Sun, and part 3 alone is quite long, but not as long as part 4. Part 4 is I'm not even sure when am I going to be able to stream reading part 4 to you guys next. I can't promise anything, but I'll try my best, okay? Probably next Tuesday around this time should be okay, I think. Yeah. If not, it would be like in the evenings on Friday or something. I'll see how it goes. We'll see. Usually I don't like to read after I'm like eaten or like full, because it makes me feel like I need to burp all the time. Not great when you have to read. Therefore, yeah, I think if the next stream should be next Thursday. I think it should be nice. And every Thursday stream should be okay around this time, 5. Yeah. Alright, without further ado, I think we should start. I don't wanna bramble for too long. Let's do it, guys. Lip balm. Always. Don't forget lip balm, because yeah, lips do get very dry when you're reading a lot. Anyway, how are you guys? I hope you guys are having a better day than I am right now. Having a lot of like anxiety. Breathe. Anyways, let's go. Let's do it. Alright, come on, let's go. Sip of tea. We are now currently reading Kazuo Ishiguro's Klara and the Sun, Part 3. the shadows of the Morgan Falls trip might be gone by the next morning, but I was disappointed. And Josie's cold manner continued for a long time afterwards. Even more puzzling was the change in Morgan's Falls made to the mother's manner. I had believed that the trip had gone well, and that there would be now a warmer atmosphere between us. But the mother, just like Josie, became more distant, and if she encountered me in the hallway or on the landing, she would no longer greet me in the way she had done before. Naturally, then, in the days that followed, I thought often about why the interaction meeting should cast no shadows at all, but Morgan's Falls, despite my complying with Josie's and the mother's wishes, had produced such consequences. Again, the possibility came into my mind that my limitations in comparison to a B3's had somehow made themselves obvious that day, causing both Josie and the mother to regret the choice that they had made. If this were so, I knew my best course was to work harder than ever to be a good AF to Josie until the shadows receded. At the same time, what was becoming clear to me was the extent to which humans, in their wish to escape loneliness, and made maneuvers that were very complex and hard to fathom, and I saw it possible that the consequences in Morgan's Falls had at no stage been within my control. As things turns out, however, I had little time to dwell on the Morgan's Falls shadows because several days after the outing, Josie's health collapsed. She became too weak to go down in the mornings to the mother's quick coffee, so instead, the mother would come up to the bedroom and stand over Josie's sleeping figure, her back remaining very straight even as she sipped her coffee and looked down at the bed. Once the mother left for the day, Melania housekeeper would take over, moving the easy chair close to the bed and sitting with her oblong on her lap, eyes moving back and forth between the screen and the sleeping Josie. And it was on such morning as I was standing just inside the bedroom door, in readiness to help, that Melania housekeeper turned and said, "AF, you behind me all the time, creep me out. Go outdoors." She had said outdoors. I turned to the door before asking quietly, "Excuse me, housekeeper, do you mean outside the house?" "Outside the room, outside the house, who care? Come back quick if I send signal." I had never before gone into the outdoors on my own, but it was clear that as far as Melania housekeeper was concerned, there was no reason why I shouldn't do so. I went carefully down the staircase, and excitement entering my mind despite the worries concerning Josie. When I stepped out onto the loose stones, the sun was high but seemed weary. I was unsure about closing the house door behind me, but in the end, since there were no passerbys, I didn't wish to disturb Josie by sounding the door chime on my return, I pulled the door nearly closed without engaging the lock mechanism. Then I stepped further into the outdoors. To my left, I could see the grass mound where I had met Rick with flying his birds. Beyond the mound was the road along which the mother left each morning, where I myself had traveled to Morgan's Falls. But I turned away from these sights and walked in the opposite direction, crossing the loose stones to where I had a clear view of the fields behind the house. The sky was pale and large, because the fields rose gradually into the distance. Mr. McBain's barn was still visible despite my no longer having the benefit of the rear window's height. The blades of the grass were easier to distinguish than the bedroom. But the main change was that I could now see Rick's house rising out of the grass. I realized that if the rear window had been positioned just a little bit more to the left, Rick's house would have been visible also from the bedroom. But I didn't consider Rick's house because my mind had become filled once more with Josie's worries, and specifically the questions of why the sun hadn't yet sent his special help, as he had done for Beggarman and his dog. I had first expected the son to help Josie in the days when she had become weak before Morgan's falls. I had then accepted that he would perhaps been correct at the point to wait. But now, with Josie so much weaker and so many things concerning her future in uncertainty, it was puzzling why he continued to delay. I had already given much thought to this matter, but now I was outside on my own, the fuse so close and the sun high above me. I was able to bring several speculations together. I could understand that for all his kindness, the sun was very busy, and there were many people besides Josie who required his attention, and even the sun could be expected to miss individuals' cases like Josie, especially if she appeared well looked after by a mother, a housekeeper, and an AF. The idea came into my mind then that for her to receive the son's special help, it might be necessary to draw his attention to Josie's situation in some particular and noticeable way. I walked on the soft earth till I was beside the fence to the first field and a wooden gate that resembled a picture frame. The gate could be opened simply by raising the loop of cord hung over its post, and I saw I could then move on into the field unimpeded. The grass in the field looked very tall, and yet Josie and Rick, while still small children, had managed to walk through it all the way to Mr. McBain's barn. I could see the start of an informal trail, created by the feet of passers-by, leading to the grass, and wondered how possible it might be that I could undertake the same journey. I thought too about the time the son had given his special nourishment to Beggarman and his dog, and considered the important differences between his circumstances and Josie's. For one thing, many passers-by had known the beggarman, and when he had become weak, he had done so in a busy street, visible to the taxi drivers and runners. Any of these people might have drawn the son's attention to his condition and that of his dog. Even more significantly, I remembered what had been happening not long before the son, given his special nourishment to the beggarman. The Cootings machines had been making its awful pollution, obliging even the sun to retreat for a time. And it had been during the fresh new era of the dreadful machine had gone away that the sun, relieved and full of happiness, had given his special help. I remained for a time in front of the picture frame gate, watching the grass lean one way, then to the other, wondering what other trails might be hidden within it, and how I might help to rescue Josie from her sickness. But I wasn't yet used to being outdoors alone and could sense disorientation starting to set in, so I turned from the fields and made my way back to the house. Dr. Ryan visited frequently during this period, and Josie spent long stretches of days asleep. The sun would pour in his normal nourishment each day, his pattern often falling across her sleeping form, but there remained no sign of his special help. But here again, the sun was perhaps correct to wait, for Josie did become gradually stronger, until eventually she was able to sit up in bed. She had been warned by Dr. Ryan not to resume her oblong lessons, so there now came the days when, propped up on her pillows, she created many pictures with her sharp pencils and sketchpad. Each time she finished a picture or decided to abandon one, she would tear it out and toss it into the air, allowing it to float down onto the rug, and it became my job to gather these sheets together into the ordered piles.
Step on me, please.
Thank you for the subscription. Thank you. I forgot. I'm sorry. Thank you for the subscription, my bros. As Dr. Ryan came less, Rick visited more. Melania, housekeeper, had always been wary of Rick, but even she could see how much his visits raise Josie's spirits, so she allowed the visits, though insisting they last no more than 30 minutes. The first afternoon Rick was shown up to the bedroom, I started to leave in order to give privacy, but Melania housekeeper stopped me on the landing, whispering, "No, AF! No, you stay in there. Make sure no hanky-panky." So, it became normal for me to remain during Rick's visits, even though he sometimes looked towards me with a go-away eye and almost never addressed me, even to say hello or goodbye. Had Josie also made such a go-away signs, I wouldn't have remained, but after Melania housekeeper's instruction. But Josie seemed happy about my presence. I even thought she took comfort from it, though she never included me in their conversations. I did my best to give privacy by remaining on the button couch and fixing my gaze over the fields. I couldn't help hearing what was being said behind me, and though I sometimes thought I shouldn't listen, I remembered it was my duty to learn as much as Josie as possible, and that by listening in this way, I might gather fresh observations otherwise unavailable to me. Rick's visits to the bedroom during this time fell into 3 phases. In the first phase, he would glance around nervously when he arrived, and behaved throughout the 30 minutes as though any careless movement he made might damage the furniture. It was during this phase he took up the habit of sitting himself on the floor just in front of the modern wardrobe, resting his back against its doors. From the button couch, I could see their reflections in the window, and with Rick in this position and Josie sitting up, they looked almost as though they were seated side by side, except with Josie at a higher level. Throughout the first phase, there was a gentle atmosphere, and the 30 minutes often passed with nothing much of substance being said. The children would often share memories from when they were younger and make jokes about them. It would take only a word or a single reference to trigger such a memory, and then they would become immersed in it. They conversed at such moments in a speech that was like a code, making me wonder if this was on account of my presence in the room, but I quickly understood it had simply to do with their familiarity with each other's life, and there was no intention to exclude my understanding. Josie didn't first draw pictures when hosting Rick, but as soon as they became more relaxed, she often sketched throughout the entire 30 minutes, tearing out sheets as they went and allowing them to float down to where he was standing, and this was how, quite innocently at first, the bubble game began. The coming of the bubble game marked the start of the next phase of Rick's visits. It's possible that the bubble game was one they had invented a long time earlier in their childhoods. Certainly, when the game started this time around, there had been no need for instructions between them. Josie had simply begun to throw down her sketches to Rick, even as they continued their rambling conversations, until at one point he scrutinized a picture and said, "Okay, it is now the bubble game. If you want, just if you want, Ricky. I don't have a pencil. Throw me one of those dark ones. I need all the dark ones here. Who's the artist here anyway? How can I do the bubbles if you won't even lend me a pencil?" Even with my back to them, it wasn't hard to guess the outline of this game. And once Rick left at the end of each half hour, I was able to observe the pages as I gathered them from the floor. And so it was. I began to appreciate growing importance this game had for the both of them. Josie's sketches were skillful, usually showing 1, 2, or occasionally 3 people together, their heads drawn deliberately too large for their bodies. During those earlier visits, the faces tended always to be kind, and were sketched only with black sharp pencils, while their shoulders and bodies, like their surroundings, had been done with color sharp pencils. In each picture, Josie left an empty bubble, hovering above one head or the other. Sometimes 2 bubbles over 2 heads, and for Rick to fill with written words. I understood quickly that even when the faces didn't resemble Rick or Josie, within the walls of this game, it was possible for all sort of pictures girls to stand for Josie, and picture boys for Rick. Similarly, other figures could stand for others in Josie's life, and the mother, say, like as it, sorry, others in Josie's life, such as the mother, say, or children from the interaction meeting, as well as others that I had not yet encountered. Although, for me, it was difficult to understand why so many faces stood for, Rick appeared to have no such problem. He never asked for clarifications concerning the drawings that fluttered down to him, and would write his words into the bubble without any hesitation. I soon understood that the words Rick wrote inside the bubbles represented thoughts, sometimes the speech of the picture people, and that as such his task carried some danger. From the start, I worried that something Josie drew or something Rick wrote would bring tension, but during this phase, the bubble game seemed to result only in the enjoyment and reminiscence, and I would see them reflected in the glass, laughing and pointing forefingers at each other. Had they concentrated solely on their game as they played it, if they had kept their conversation focused just on the pictures, perhaps the tensions wouldn't have leaked in. But as Josie continued to sketch and Rick to fill in the bubbles, they began to converse about topics unrelated to the pictures. One sunny afternoon, with the sun's pattern touching Rick's feet where he sat against the modern wardrobe, Josie said, "You know, Ricky, I'm wondering if you are getting jealous, the way you always keep asking about this portrait." "I don't understand. You mean you're doing an actual portrait of me up there?" "No, Ricky. I mean the way you keep bringing up my portrait, the one this guy's doing of me up in the city." "Oh, Dad." "Well, I did mention it once. I suppose that's hardly bringing it up all the time." "You keep bringing it up twice just yesterday." Rick's writing hand paused, and he didn't look up. "I suppose I'm curious, but how can anyone get jealous about your portrait getting done?" "Seems dumb, but you definitely sound that way." For the next few moments, they were silent, getting on with their respective tasks. Then Rick said, "I wouldn't say I'm jealous. I'm concerned. This artist guy, this person, everything you said about him sounds, well, creepy. He's just doing my portrait is all. He's always respectful and always anxious not to tire me out. He never sounds right. You say I keep bringing this up. Well, that's because each time I do, you say something else to make me think, oh my god, this is getting creepy." "What's creepy about it?" "For one thing, you have been to his studio, what, like 4 times? And he never shows you anything. No rough sketches, nothing. All he seems to do is take photos up close. This piece of you, that piece of you. Is that what artists really do? He prefers photos because that way I don't get exhausted sitting down, sitting still for hours in the old-fashioned way. This way, I'm only in there for 20 minutes tops. Each time, he takes the photos he needs stage by stage, and Mom's always there. Look, why would my mom hire some pervert to do my portrait?" Rick didn't respond. Then Josie went on. "I think it is some kind of jealousy, Ricky. You know what? I don't mind. Shows that you got the right attitude. You're being protective. Shows that you're thinking about our plans. So don't worry." "I'm not worried. This is such a ridiculous accusation." "It is not an accusation. I'm not saying like it's sexual or anything, but I'm saying is that this portrait is just part of the big world out there, and you're worried it could get in our way. When I say you might be jealous, I'm just meaning in that sense." "Fair enough." Their plan, though frequently mentioned, was rarely discussed in detail. Nevertheless, it was during this still gentle phase of the visits that I began to gather together their various remarks about it into a coherent observation. I came to understand that the plan wasn't anything they had built carefully, but more of a vague wish connected to their future. I realized too
the significance of this plan for my own aims, that as the future unfolded, even if the mother, Melania housekeeper, and I could remain near her at all times, without the plan, Josie might still not keep away loneliness. Hello, Ando! Sorry, I will finish reading that before I take a quick pause to address you. Hope you don't mind. Thank you for dropping by. I hope you're still here. Welcome, guys. Welcome to my stream. Welcome to my video. It will be up on YouTube as soon as possible. Where do I get? Alright, let's continue. Then there came a point when the bubble game stopped bringing laughter and brought instead fear and uncertainty. In my mind today, this marks the third and the last phase of those visits Rick made at the time. It's hard now to establish which of them first altered the mood. In the earlier phases, Josie's sketches were often curated purposely to bring back amusing or happy incidents they had shared in the past. This was one reason Rick was able to fill the bubbles quickly and with little hesitations. But there now came a change in Rick's reaction when the sheets floated down to him. Increasingly, he would stare at them for long moments, sigh or frown, and then he wrote his words. He would do so slowly and with more concentration, often not replying to anything Josie said until he finished. And Josie's responses, once Rick had passed the sheets back up to her, became hard to predict. She might study a sheet with blank eyes before placing it amidst her bedclothes without a comment. Or sometimes she would flick a completely sheet back onto the floor, this time to a spot beyond Rick's reach. Every now and then, the mood might return to the way it was before, and they would laugh or argue in a friendly way. But increasingly, either Josie's picture or Rick's words would cause an unkind exchange. Even so, a comfortable atmosphere would usually have returned by the time Melania housekeeper called up at the end of the 30 minutes. Once, Rick reached forward and picked up a sheet and regarded it carefully, then put down his sharp pencil. He went on looking at the pictures for a long time, for some time, till Josie, noticing from the bed, stopped her sketching. Something up, Ricky? I was just wondering what these were supposed to be. What do they look like? These folks around here. Am I to assume that they are aliens? It almost looks like instead of a head, they have, well, a giant eyeball. I'm sorry if I had this all wrong. You haven't got it all wrong. There was a coldness in her voice and almost a small fear. Well, at least not really. They're not aliens. They're just what they are. Alright, they're an eyeball tribe. But what's rather troubling is the way they are staring at her. What's troubling about it? The silence continued behind me and the window reflections, and I saw Rick continuing to stare at the sheets. So what's troubling about it? Josie asked again. I'm not sure. This is an extra large bubble you have made for her too. I'm not sure what I should write. Write whatever that you think that she's thinking. No different from the others. Then there was another silence. The sun on the glass made it hard to see the reflection, and I was tempted to turn around, even though this might reduce privacy. But before I could, Rick said, "Their eyes are really quite creepy. And what's even creepier, it looks like she wants them to keep staring at her." That's sicko, Rick. Why would she want something like that? I don't know. You tell me. How can I tell you? Josie's voice was now annoyed. Whose job it is to do the bubbles? She's half smiling, like she's pleased on the inside. No, Ricky, that's wrong. That's just sick. I'm sorry, I must be misinterpreting. Misinterpreting, right? So hurry up and do her bubble. The next one here, nearly finished. Rick, you there? Perhaps I might pass on this one. Oh, come on! The sun had retreated now, and I could see Rick in the glass tossing the sheet gently onto the floor to join the untidy pile accumulating closer to Josie's bed. I'm disappointed, Rick. Then don't draw pictures like that one. There was another silence. I could see Josie on the bed pretending to be absorbed in her next sketch. I could no longer see Rick very well in the reflection, but I knew he had remained quite still against the modern wardrobe and was staring past me out the rear window. Skip disappear. After Rick's visits finished, Josie would usually be tired and toss her sharp pencils, sketch pads, and loose pages onto the floor, turn onto her front and rest. At these moments, I had come off the button couch to pick up the many items now scattered over the floor, and I would then have the chance to see what they had been discussing during the visit. Josie, even with her cheeks pressed into the pillow, wouldn't actually be asleep, and often she would continue to make remarks with her eyes closed. So she was fully aware I was observing the pictures as I gathered them, and clearly didn't mind. In fact, it's likely it was her wish that I look at each and every one of them. Once, while performing this tidying, I happened to pick up a sheet, and though I glanced at it only fleetingly, established straight away that the two main faces in the picture were supposed to represent Missy and the long-arm girl from the interaction meeting. There were, of course, various inaccuracies, but Josie's intention was obvious. The sisters were at the front of the picture with unkind expressions, while other less finished faces crowded around them. And although there were no furniture detail, I knew the setting was the open plan. Had it not been for a large bubble above it, it would have been easy not to notice the small featureless creature squeezed into the gap between the sisters. In contrast to the picture Missy and the picture long-arm girl, this creature lacked the usual human features, such as face, shoulders, arms, and resembled more of the water blobs that form on the surface of the island near the sink. In fact, if not for the bubble above it, a passerby might not even have guessed this shape was intended to represent a person at all. The sisters were ignoring the water blob person completely, despite the person's closeness. Inside the bubble, Rick had written, "The smart kids think I have no shape, but I do. I'm just keeping it hidden because who wants to see them? Because who wants them to see?" Although I only glimpsed this picture for a second, Josie knew I had taken it in and said from the bed in a sleepy voice, "Don't you think that's a weird thing for him to write?" When I gave a small laugh and carried on tidying, she went on, "Do you suppose he thinks that I meant that to be him? The little guy with the two in between the two nasties? Do you suppose that's why he filled the bubble that way?" "It's possible. But you don't think so, do you, Klara?" Then she said, "Klara, you listening? Come on. Can we have a comment here? It's perhaps more likely he assumed the small person was Josie." She said nothing else while I ordered the various sheets into piles and placed them with the previous one in a small space beneath the dressing table. I thought she had fallen asleep when she suddenly said, "What makes you say that?" "It's only an estimate. I think Rick thought the small person was Josie, and I believe Rick was trying to be kind." "Kind? What? Why is that being kind?" "I believe Rick worries about Josie, how she sometimes appears to change in different situations. But in this picture, Rick is being kind because she's suggesting Josie is being clever to protect herself and isn't really changing. So what if I sometimes want to act different? Who wants to be the same all the time? The trouble with Rick is he always gets accusing when I'm any way he doesn't like. It's because he wants me to stay the way I was when we were small kids. I don't really think that's what Rick wishes." "Then what's all this? All this no-shape hiding stuff? I don't see what's kind about it. That's Rick's problem. He doesn't want to grow up. At least his mother doesn't want him to, and he goes along with it. The idea is he lives with his mom forever and ever. How is that going to help our plan? Anytime I show any signs of trying to grow up, he gets sulky. I said nothing to this, and Josie continued to lie there with her eyes closed. She did fall asleep then, but just before she did, she said quietly, Maybe he did mean it to be kind. I wonder if Josie would bring up this particular picture and the words inside the bubble during Rick's next visit. But she didn't. And I realized there was a kind of rule between them not to talk directly about any of the pictures or Bubble's words once they had been completed. Perhaps such an understanding was necessary in allowing them to draw and write freely. Even so, as I have said, I considered from the start that their bubble game was filled with danger, and it was what brought about the sudden end to Rick's 30 minutes visit. It's getting intense. It was a rainy afternoon, but the sun's pattern still came faintly into the bedroom. There had been around then a run of fairly relaxed visits, and the mood that day had also been quite comfortable. Then, 12 minutes into their visit, they were again playing the bubble game. Josie said from the bed, "What's going on down there? Haven't you finished yet?" "I'm still thinking." "Ricky, the idea is you don't think. You write down the first thing that comes to you." "Fair enough, but this one requires more thought." "Why? What's different about it? Hurry it up. I've nearly finished with this next one." In the window's reflections, I could see Rick at his usual place on the floor, knees drawn up so that he could rest the picture on them, both hands down at his sides. He was staring at the picture before him with a puzzled expression. After a while, without pausing from her drawing, Josie said, "You know, I've always meant to ask, why is it your mom don't drive anymore? You still have that car, right?" "No one started it up in years, but yeah, it's still in the garage. Maybe once I get my license, I'll get it checked over." "Is it like she's afraid of accidents?" "Josie, we have talked about this already." "Yeah, but I don't remember. Is it because she got too scared?" "Something like that. My mom, she's the reverse. Drives too fast." When Rick didn't respond, she asked, "Ricky, you still haven't filled that in?" "I'll get there. Just give me a moment." "Not driving is one thing, but doesn't your mom mind not having friends?" "She has friends. That Mrs. Rivers come all the time, and she's friends with your mom, isn't she?" "That's not really what I meant. Anyone could have one or two individual friends, but your mom, she doesn't have society. My mom doesn't have so many friends either, but she does have society." "Society? That sounds rather quaint. What does it mean?" "It means when you walk into a store or get into a taxi or people take you seriously, treat you well, having society. Important, right?" "Look, Josie, you know my mother's not always so well. It's not as if she made a decision about it." "But she does make decisions, right? One thing she made decision about you, back whenever." "I don't know why we are talking about this." "You know what I think, Ricky. Stop me if this being unfair. I think your mom never went ahead with you because she wanted to keep you for herself, and now it's too late. I don't see why we are talking about this. And what does it matter? Who wants this society anyway? None of it needs to get in the way of anything." "It gets in the way, Ricky. Gets in the way of our plan for one thing." "Look, I'm doing my best." "But you're not doing your best, Ricky. You keep talking about our plan, but what really are you doing?" Sorry.
gosh. I was too excited. Sorry, guys. I cannot do dialogue scenes properly because it's difficult. Okay. It gets in the way, Ricky. It gets in the way of our plan, for one thing. Look, I'm doing my best, but you're not doing your best, Ricky. You keep talking about your plan, but what really are you doing? Each day goes by. We get older. Stuff keeps coming up. I'm doing all I can, but not you, Rick. What I am not doing, I should be doing. Going to more of your interaction meetings? You could at least try more. You could do like what we said, study harder, try for Atlas Brookings. What's the point in talking about Atlas Brookings? I don't even have an outside chance. Of course you have a chance, Ricky. You're smart. Even my mom says that you stand a chance. A theoretical chance. A theoretical chance. Atlas Brookings may make a big thing of it, but it's less than 2%, that's all. Their intake of unlifteds is less than 2%. But you're smarter than any of the other unlifteds trying to get in. So why won't you go for it? I'll tell you, it's because your mom wants you to stay with her forever. She doesn't want you going out there and turning into a real adult. Hey, are you still not finished down there? The next one's ready. Rick was silent, gazing at the picture. Josie, despite her announcement, continued to add to her picture. Anyway, she went on, how is this going to work? Our plan, I mean. How is it going to work if I've got society and you haven't? My mom drives too fast, but at least she has got courage. It goes wrong with Sal, but even after that she finds the courage to go ahead with me all over again. That takes courage, right? Rick suddenly leaned forward and started writing on the picture. He often used a magazine to press on, but this time I could see the page was directly against his thigh and starting to wrinkle. But he went on writing quickly, then stood up, dropping his sharp pencil on the floor. Rather than hand the picture over to Josie, he tossed it towards the bed, making it land on the duvet in front of her. He then stepped back till he was near the door, all the time watching her with large eyes that were both angry and fearful. Josie turned to him in surprise. Then she put down her own sharp pencil, reached forwards to the sheet. For a long moment, she looked at it with blank eyes, while Rick kept watching from the door. I can't believe you had write this, she said finally. Why would you do this? I turned around on the button couch, estimating the tension had reached a level that could no longer justify complete privacy. Perhaps Rick had forgotten about my presence, because my turning around appeared to startle him. His gaze came to me for a second, still filled with fear and anger. Then he strode out of the room without a word. We listened to the steps going down the stairs. Once the front door noise came, Josie yawned, threw everything off the bed, and lay down on her front, as though the visit had ended like any other. He can be so exhausting sometimes, she said into her pillow. I came off the button couch and began to tidy the room. Josie's eyes stayed closed, and she said nothing more, but I could tell that she hadn't fallen asleep. As I went tidying, I naturally glanced at the sheet that had caused the tension. As expected, the picture showed versions of Josie and Rick. There were many inaccuracies, but also enough resemblance to leave no doubt about the intended identities. Picture Josie and picture Rick appear to be floating in the sky, the trees, the road, and houses far below to reduce to miniature sizes. Behind them, one section of the sky were 7 birds flying in formation. Picture Josie was holding up with 2 hands a much larger bird, offering it as a special gift to Picture Rick. Picture Josie had a large smile, and Picture Rick a look of thrilled amazement. There was no bubble for Picture Rick. There was only one was for Josie's thought, and inside it, Rick had written, I wish I could go out and walk and run and skateboard and swim in lakes.
But I can't because my mother has courage. So instead, I get to stay in bed and be sick. I'm glad about this, I really am. I added this picture to the collection I was gathering in my hands, making sure that it wasn't near the top. Josie remained quiet and still, her eyes closed, but I knew she wasn't asleep. In the days before Morgan's falls, I would perhaps have spoken to her at this point, and Josie would have responded with honesty. But the mood between us was different now, so I decided to say nothing. I went to the dressing table, reached down, and placed his latest pile beside the others in the space underneath. Rick didn't come back the next day or the day after, but when Melania housekeeper asked, "Where boy go? Get sick?" Josie just shrugged and said nothing. As the days continued and there was still no visit from Rick, Josie grew more quiet, and her signals became keep away ones. She still continued with her drawings in bed, but without Rick and the bubble game, her enthusiasm would quickly drain away, and often she would toss unfinished pictures onto the floor, stretch out on the bed, and stare at the ceiling. One afternoon, when she had been staring this way, I said to her, "If you like, Josie, we could play the bubble game. If Josie would draw the pictures, I'll do my best to think of suitable words." She went on staring up in the air. Then she turned and said, "Look, that's just not gonna work. I don't mind you listening in, but there's no way you could do that instead of Rick. No way at all." "I see. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have suggested." "No, you shouldn't have." As more days passed without Rick's visit, Josie grew lethargic, and I was concerned that she was going weak again. It occurred to me that this was the ideal time for the son to send his special help. And whenever his pattern in the bedroom altered suddenly, or when he burst out in the sky following an overcast spell, I would watch with particular keenness. But though he continued unfailingly to send his normal nourishment, his special help didn't come. One morning, I returned to the bedroom after taking down her breakfast tray, and found her propped up on her pillow, sketching busily with something like her old enthusiasm. She also had a serious expression I hadn't seen before while working on a picture, and when I tried to make conversations, she didn't reply. Once, as I was tidying in the room, came near the bed, she adjusted her posture to prevent me glimpsing any part of her sheet. After a time, she tore out the page, screwed it into a tight ball, and dropped it into a crevice in her duvet between herself and the wall. She then began a fresh drawing, her eyes large and tense. I sat on the button couch, this time facing towards her so she would know I was ready to converse whenever she wished to do so. After almost an hour, she put down her sharp pencil and stared at her picture for some time. "Klara, see down there, the bottom left drawer? Could you get me an envelope? One of the large padded ones?" As I was crouching down by the drawer, I saw Josie raise her sharp pencil again, and from its movements, I knew she was no longer drawing but writing words. Then she folded the picture down in the middle, placing a blank sheet between the halves to prevent smudging, took a padded envelope from me, and carefully slid the picture inside. Peeling off the thin paper tape, she sealed the envelope, pressing its edge to make sure. "Glad that's done," she said, turning the envelope in her hands as though it brought her comfort to do so. But I began to move away from the bed. She suddenly held it towards me. "Would you put this in the same drawer you found the envelope, lower left?" "Of course." I took it from her, but didn't immediately go to the drawer. Instead, I stood in the middle of the room, holding the envelope. Look at her. "I wonder if this picture is a special gift from Josie to Rick." "What makes you say that?" "It was just an estimate." "Well, your estimate's right. I wanted it to be for Rick, for when he comes here next." There was a silence while she watched me, and I was uncertain if she was simply impatient for me to place the envelope in the drawer as she requested, or if she was waiting for me to say something more about Rick and his visits. In the end, I said, Perhaps he'll come again soon. Perhaps he will. No sign of it though. I think Rick will be pleased to see the picture. He'll see Josie took special care of it. I didn't take special care. I didn't take special care. She flashed angry eyes. I got bored and drew another picture, that's all. But you're right, it's for Rick. Problem is, he will have to come here to get it, and he doesn't come here anymore. He went on staring at me. I remained standing in the middle of the room. Josie, I said after a while, if you like, I could take the drawing to him. Her eyes became surprised and also excited. You mean you take it over to him, to his house? Yes, it's only the neighbor house after all. I guess it wouldn't be so weird you taking this to him. Other people's AFs go on errands all the time, right? I'll be happy to go. I believe I'll be able to find the correct trail to his house. And would you do it today before lunch? Whenever Josie wishes. If you like, I could take it to him now, right away. You think that's a good idea? I raised the padded envelope slightly. I'd very much like to take Josie's picture to Rick. It would be good for me to explore the outside. And if Rick receives this special picture, he may forgive Josie and her best friend again. What do you mean forgive? It's for me to forgive him. That's really dumb, Klara. I don't think I want you to take this to him now. I'm sorry, it is my error. I don't understand yet the rules about forgiveness. Even so, I think it would be best to take him the picture. I think he would like it. Her anger faded from her face. Okay, go ahead, take it. Then as I turned, she quietly added, You're probably right. I guess it is him who needs to forgive me. I'll take it to him and we can see what he does. Okay, then she smiled. If he's rude about it, you just tear it up, okay? Her smile was almost like the smiles from before Morgan's falls. I smiled too then, and then I said, I hope that won't be necessary. She fell back onto her pillow in a jokey way. Okay, go, I need a rest now. But as I was leaving the room, the padded envelope held closely to me, she suddenly said, Hey, Klara. Yes? It must be dull, right? Living here with a sick kid. She was still smiling, but I saw fear beneath her smile. It's never dull to be with Josie. You waited all the time for me in the store. I bet you're wishing now that you had gone with some other kid. I've never wished such a thing. It was my wish to be Josie's AF, and the wish came true. Yeah, but... She made a small laughing sound full of sadness. But that was before you got here. I promised it would be great. I'm very happy here. I have no wish other than to be Josie's AF. If I get better, we can go outside together all the time. We could go to the city and see my dad. Maybe he could take us to other cities. Those are possibilities for the future. But Josie must know. I couldn't have a better home than this, or a better child than Josie. I'm so glad that I waited. That manager allowed me to wait. Josie thought about this, then she smiled again. It was full of kindness with no fear behind it. So we are friends, right? Best friends. Yes, of course. Okay, good. So remember, don't take any shit from Rick. I smiled too then, and held up the padded envelope to show I would take good care of it. Melania's housekeeper expressed no objection to my going alone on an errand to Rick's house. Nevertheless, as I crossed the loose stones towards the picture frame gate, she remained at the door watching me, and only as I stepped into the first fields did she go back inside. I followed the informal trail and the ground soon became hard to predict. One soft step often coming straight after a hard one, the grass came up to my shoulders, and a fear entered my mind that I would lose my bearings. But this part of the field had been divided into orderly boxes, so as I passed from one box into the next, I was able to see clearly those lined up ahead of me. Less helpful was the way the grass frequently sprang across me from one side to the other, but even this I quickly learned to control by holding out an arm. If I had both arms free, I would have made even faster progress, but of course I was holding Josie's envelope in one hand and couldn't risk harming it. Then the tall grass finished around me and I was standing in front of Rick's house. While viewing from a distance, I had already estimated that Rick's house wasn't as high rank as Josie's. Now I could see that many of its white paint boards had become grey, even brown in some places, and there were three windows were and there and three of the windows were dark rectangles with no curtains or blinds behind them. I went up a stairways of planks, each one bending under my tread. Then on a platform constructed from more such planks, this time with gaps between them, through which I could see the muddy ground below. Near the house front door, pushed over to one side, was the refrigerator, its back fully exposed to passers-by, and I saw how spiders had made their homes within the complicated metal bracing. I had paused to observe their delicate cobwebs when the front door opened, though I hadn't pressed any button, and Rick came out onto the platform. "Excuse me," I said quickly. "I didn't wish to take your privacy. I came on an important errand." He didn't seem angry, but said nothing and went on watching me. "AFs often do important errands," I said. "Josie sent me on this one." I raised the envelope. Excitement appeared suddenly in Rick's face and then vanished again. "It's good that you came then," he said. Perhaps he expected me to simply hand him over the envelope and then go away. But I had anticipated this possibility and made no move to offer it to him. We went on standing on the planks like that, facing one another, the wind moving through the gaps. "In that case," he said eventually, "I suppose you ought to come in and be warned. It's not fancy in here." The hallway had a dark wood floor. The hallway had a dark wood floor, and we walked past an open trunk in which items such as broken lamps and single shoes had been placed. Rick led the way into the large room with a wide window looking out over the fields. The furniture wasn't modern and didn't interconnect like that in the open plan. There was a heavy, dark wardrobe, floor rugs with faded patterns, hard and soft chairs in different shapes and sizes. Of the many small pictures on the wall, some were photographs, some drawn by sharp pencils, and here too spiders had made homes in the corners of the frames. And there were books, round-faced clocks, low tables. I could see navigation wouldn't be easy, so selected a spot where the floor was relatively open, went to it, and stood there with my back to the wide window. "Okay, this is where we live," Rick said. "My mother and me." "It is kind of you to allow me in. I was watching you coming from upstairs. I'll need to go back up soon." He gestured with just his eyes towards the ceiling. Then he said with sadness, "I suppose you noticed the smell." "I am not able to smell." "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. I assumed smell would be an important faculty. I mean for safety, burning, things like that. Perhaps for that reason bee trees have been given a limited smell, but I have none." "Well, that's lucky for you just now, because this place still smells, even though I did the hall this morning. Did it over and over and over." Tears had appeared in his eyes, but he went on looking at me. "Rick's mother isn't well?" "You could say that, though she's not sick in the way Josie's sick. I'd rather not talk about Mom if you don't mind. How's Josie these days?" "I'm afraid she's no better." "Worse?" "Perhaps not worse, but I believe her condition may be a serious one." "That's what I was thinking." He sighed and sat down on a sofa, facing me. So she sent you here on an errand?" "Yes, she wanted me to give you this. She worked especially hard on it." I held out I held out the envelope in such a way that he could receive it while still be sitting on the sofa. But he rose to his feet, even though he had only just sat down, and taking the envelope, opened it carefully. He gazed at the picture for some time, his face on the edge of smiling. Rick and Josie forever, he said, finally. Is that what it says inside the bubble? Oh, I thought you had seen it. Josie put it in the envelope without showing me. He went on looking at it for another moment and then turned the drawing for me to see. It was unlike any I had seen during the bubble games. Much of the sheet was filled with sharp-looking objects, many with angry, protruding points that had become tangled together into an impenetrable mess. Josie had used pencils of many colors to create the mesh, but its overall effect was dark and forbidding. However, a clear, tranquil space had been kept in the lower left-hand corner, where the figures of two small people could be seen, their backs to passers-by, walking away hand in hand. They were too stick-like to be identifiable other than a boy and a girl, but they seemed happy and lacking worries. There was bubble just above them, but because it was without the usual tail or bubble dots, the words inside seemed more like a poster slogan or taxi door ad than the thoughts from either person's mind. So what do you think? He asked. It's very nice. I think it's a kind picture. Yes, I suppose it is a kind message. Suddenly, music and electronic voices came loudly from upstairs, and annoyance appeared in Rick's face. He rushed out of the room, still holding Josie's picture. Mom! He shouted in the hall. Mom, for God's sake, turn that down, please! A voice from upstairs said something, then Rick called up more gently. I'll come up in a minute. Now please turn it down. The electronic sound grew quieter, and when Rick came back into the large room, he was again looking at Josie's picture. Yes, it is a kind picture. Say thanks to Josie for me. I think Josie was hoping Rick would come in person to say thank you. His smile faded. But it's not that simple, is it? He said. You're always there taking it all in, so you know as well as I do the way she keeps getting at me. There's no reason a person has to take all that. She pushes it too far. Then thinks that it can be fixed with a nice picture. Send an AF over with it. Well, she has to understand. Things aren't always that easily fixed. If Rick came to visit once more, I believe Josie may wish to apologize. Really? Look, I know Josie, and my guess is she's pretty convinced that I'm the one who needs to do the apologizing. Josie and I already had the very discussion. I believe that she's wishing to apologize to Rick. I suppose I was out of order too, but she cannot just keep saying all that stuff about my mom. It's not fair. My mother's doing her best and she's getting better. Although the version of Rick who had opened the door and faced me on the platform had been much like the one who had ignored me throughout his visits, it was interesting to see he had now become much closer to the person I talked to at the interaction meeting after the other children had gone outside. In fact, it was almost as if this version of Rick was meeting me for the first time since that afternoon and continuing the conversation that we had then started. I agree Josie's words were sometimes unkind, I said, but that might be because Josie feels Rick's mother holds Rick too closely to allow Rick and Josie's plan to become possible in the future. But why does Josie blame Mom all the time? It's not fair. Josie worries about the plan. I think she believes Rick's mother is reluctant to let Rick go because she fears the loneliness that will result for her. Look, you might be a very intelligent AF, but there's a lot you don't know. If you ever listen to Josie's side of things, you will never get the whole picture. And it's not just about Mom. Josie's always trying to trap me now. Trap you? You must have heard. She's always doing it now. Either she accuses me of thinking about the stuff too much, or she's offended because I don't think about her enough in that way. Always trapping me whatever I say. She claims that I'm always lusting after these girls that I can see on my DS. Then, next time she brings it up, I don't react. She says there's something wrong with me. I'm not being natural. She keeps talking about how we knew each other too well when we were children, so the whole sex thing might not even work with us. Whatever I try to say or do, it's wrong and I get trapped. And the way she goes on about mom, it goes too far. Plan or no plan, that's just not fair. He sat down again, the sun's pattern falling across him. He placed Josie's drawing carefully on the sofa space beside him, and though the sheets was face down, kept staring at it. Anyway, he said quietly, Josie's ill now. None of this our plan. None of it will count if she doesn't get better soon. And the way it's going, I don't know what to think of these days. He looked up at me. Look, Klara, you're supposed to be super intelligent. So, what's your estimate? How ill is Josie? I believe, as I've said, that Josie's illness is serious. It's possible that she could become so weak she will have to pass away just as her sister did. But I believe there's a way for her to become well again, but that the adults haven't yet considered. I believe so also that the situation is now urgent and that we cannot keep waiting. Even if it seems rude and taking privacy, it's perhaps time to be active. I came here today, of course, because of my important errand, but I was also hoping Rick would give me some useful advice. You are super intelligent and I'm an idiot kid who hasn't been lifted. But okay, if you want, I'll try and give you advice. Fire away. I wish to go across the fields to Mr. McBain's barn. I think Rick has been there at least once. Josie told me about it. You mean the barn over there? We did go there once when we were pretty young still before she got ill. I've been there other times since, just on my own. It's nothing special. A place to sit in the shade if you happen to be taking a walk out there. How's that going to help, Josie? I shouldn't confide just now, in case it's necessarily a secret. I may even be taking things too far simply by going to Mr. McBain's barn, but I feel I must now try. You mean to speak to Mr. McBain? About Josie's health? You'd be lucky to run into him out there. He lives 5 miles away from his main spread. Hardly ever comes around here these days. It wasn't Mr. McBain I wished to talk to, but please, I mustn't confide or will risk the special help Josie may yet receive. All I wish from Rick is some useful advice. I turn myself until we are both looking out the wide window. Please tell me, is there an informal trail through the grass that will take me to the barn, like the one that brought me here to Rick's house? He rose to his feet and walked to the window. There's a path of sorts. It's easier some days than the others. As you say yourself, it's informal. No one keeps it specially cleared or anything. Sometimes you go that way and everything overgrown. But if one's path blocked or soaked, you can usually find another. There's always some way through, even in the winter. He was suddenly looking me up and down, as if regarding me in earnest for the first time. I don't know much about AFs, so I don't know how hard it is for you. If you want, I could come with you. If it's really just going to help Josie, though we're not speaking right now, I'll be pleased to help. That's very kind of you, Rick, but I think I'd better go alone. As I say, there's a possibility. Oh God. Rick suddenly turned and moved towards the door. I had already been aware of the footsteps moving within the building, but now they were in the hallway. Then Miss Helen, though I didn't yet know her name, came into the room. Her gaze moved all around her, but she appeared not to notice me. She had a light coat around her shoulders, the sort of office workers wear outdoors, into which she hadn't yet put her arms, and she clutched at it to stop it from slipping as she strode down a wooden trunk down the window ledge. Where could it be? How silly of me! She raised the trunk lid and began to go through its content. Mom, what are you looking for? Rick sounded annoyed, as if his mother had broken a rule. He came and stood beside me and we both watched Miss Helen bending over the box. I know, she said. We have a visitor. I'll attend in just a moment. When she straightened her to face us, she was holding a shoe, its companion dangling from it, on a piece of tangled shoelace. I'm sorry. she said, now looking directly at me. I have dreadful manners. Welcome. Thank you. One never knows how to greet a guest like you. After all, are you a guest after all? Yeah, are you a guest at all? Or do I treat you like a vacuum cleaner? I suppose I did as much just now. I'm sorry. Mom, Rick said quietly. Don't fuss, darling. Let me get to know our new visitor in my own way. The shoe that had been dangling dropped into the trunk of its own weight. Miss Helen stared at it, the other shoe still in her hand. I saw Rick was becoming increasingly uncomfortable, and I wanted to leave to give privacy. But Miss Helen then went on speaking to me. I know who you are, Josie's little companion. What a great success you have been. I've heard all about it from Chrissy. She comes here quite often, you know. Doesn't she, Rick? Won't you sit down? You're very kind, but I feel I should be returning. Not on my account, I hope. I came down looking forward to a nice chat. Mom, Klara has responsibilities, and you are probably still tired. I'm feeling fine, thank you, darling. Then, to me, she said, apparently I wasn't at my best last night. Now, Klara, I expect you're curious about me. Chrissy says that you are curious about everything. If so, you must have noticed that I am English. Are you equipped to identify accents? Or perhaps you can see deep into me, right through my genetics? Mom, please. English people often came into the store, I said, smiling. So all the AFs became familiar with your way of speaking. We thought it was pleasant, and manager, the lady who looked after us, and always encouraged us to learn from it. The thought of all of you robots receiving elocution lessons, how delightful! Mom. Speaking of lessons, Klara, your name is Klara, isn't it? Speaking of lessons, there's an idea that's been brewing here in this household. Mom, definitely no. Klara isn't interested in... Let me speak, darling. Here she is in person, so let's seize our chance. I must say, darling, you have developed a tendency these days to rule the roost. It's almost irritating, Klara. Are you willing to listen to our idea? Of course. Rick began to walk away as if to leave the room in disgust, but he stopped at the doorway so that from where I was standing I could see that just a part of his back, the rear of his elbows. I'm not a party of this, he called out, as though to someone in the hallway. Miss Helen smiled at me, and then sat down on the sofa Rick had occupied earlier, and she adjusted her light coat with one hand, and her shoe still in the other. Rick used to go to school, you know. I mean, real old-fashioned ones. It was rather lawless, but he made some nice friends there. Didn't you, dear? I'm not participating. Then why are you still hovering over there like that? You do look odd, darling. Do either leave or stay. Rick didn't move, keeping his back towards us, his shoulder now leaning on the door frame. Well, the long and short of it is that Rick left the school to take up home tutoring like all the smarter children. But then, well, you may already know, things grew complicated. Miss Helen became suddenly silent and stared past my shoulder. I thought she had seen something through the wide window behind me and was about to turn when she said, "There's nothing out there, Klara." I was just lost in thoughts, recalling an incident. I get that way sometimes. Rick would tell you, I require someone to give me a little nudge when I get like that. Mom, for God's sake. Where were we? Ah, yes. So the plan was for Rick to become home tutored by screen professors like all the other smart children. But of course, you probably know, it all became complicated. And here we are, darling. Would you like to tell the tale from here? No? Well, that's the long and short of it. Even though Rick was never lifted, there still remains one decent option for him. Atlas Brookings takes a small number of unlifted students, the only proper college that will still do so. They believe in the principle, and thank heavens for that. Now, there are only a few such places available each year, so naturally the competition is savage. But Rick is clever, and if he applied himself and perhaps received just a little expert guidance, the sort I can't give him, he has a good chance. Oh, yes, you do, darling. Don't shake your head like that. But the long and short of it is that we can't find screen tutors for him. They are either members of the TWE, which forbids its members to take unlifted students, or else they are bandits demanding ridiculous fees, which we, of course, are in no position to offer. But then, we heard you arrived next door and I had a marvelous idea. Mom, I mean it. We're not going any further with this. Rick came back to the room, striding towards his mother as if to pick her up and carry her off. Very well, darling. If you feel so strongly, we shan't continue. Rick had now come right up to the sofa and was glaring down at Miss Helen. She adjusted her posture slightly so that she could go on looking at me past him. Just now, Klara, when I appeared to be in a dream, it wasn't any dream, you know. I was looking out there. She pointed the shoes behind me, and I was recalling. Turn and look all you like. I assure you there's nothing there just now. But had changed the topic. His voice had lost the urgency. He half turned to me, stepping back so he no longer obstructing his mother's view. It was a nice day. Around 4 in the afternoon, Miss Helen was saying. I recalled Rick and he came and he saw it too, didn't you, dear? Though he claimed it was too late. It could have been anything, Rick said, anything at all. What I saw was Chrissy, Josie's mother, that is. I saw her come out of the grass just over there, holding someone by the arm. I'm explaining myself rather poorly, but what I mean was it was as if this other person had been trying to run away, and Chrissy had been after her, and she had caught hold of her, and hadn't been quite able to stop her. So they were both of them tumbled out, so to speak, just over there, out from the grass onto our land. Mom wasn't perhaps in the best condition that day to see things accurately. I was able to see perfectly well. Rick doesn't like this story, so he tries to insinuate all kinds of things. Do you mean, I asked, that you saw Josie's mother come out of the grass with a child? One other than Josie? Chrissy was trying to hold back this person, and then she did manage to pose some control just out there. Chrissy had both arms around the girl. Rick got here in time to see that part. Then they both vanished back into the grass. It could have been anyone. Rick, now more relaxed, sat down beside his mother, and he too looked past me out the window. Okay, one was Josie's mom. I'll allow that. But the other one looked like Sal, Miss Helen said. Josie's sister. That's why I call Rick. This being a good 2 years after Sal is supposed to have died. Rick laughed, putting his arm around her shoulders, squeezed his mother affectionately, tilting her light coat. Mom has some weird theories, like one about Sal still living in that house, hiding in some cupboard. I didn't say that, Rick. I never suggested such a thing, seriously. Sal passed away. It was a great tragedy, and we shan't play foolish game in her memory. But what I'm saying is that the person I saw trying to run away from Chrissy looked like Sal. That's all I said. But this is such a strange story, I said. I was just thinking, Klara, Rick said. Josie might be wondering what happened to you. Ah, but our little friend can't go yet, Miss Helen said. I have just remembered what we are discussing. We are discussing Rick's education. No, Mom, that's enough. But darling, Clara's here, and I mean to talk to her about this. And what do we have here? Miss Helen had noticed Josie's picture, which Rick had left on the sofa face down on the envelope. That's enough! Before Miss Helen could reach it, Rick had snatched up the picture and reasoned quickly. There you go again, darling, trying to rule the roost. You must stop it." With his back to Miss Helen to shield what he was doing, he put Josie's picture back into the envelope with some care. Then he walked out of the room. This time, not stopping at the threshold, we heard his firm stride at the hallway, the front door opening then slamming shut. "A little air will do him good," Miss Helen said. "He gets cooped up, and now he's even stopped going to visit Josie." She was again looking past me out the wide window, and this time when I turned, I saw Rick's figure outside on the boards, leaning on the rail where the plank stairs descended from the platform. He was gazing out over the fields, the sun's pattern all over him. The wind was disturbing his hair, but he remained quite still. Miss Helen rose from the sofa and came a few steps towards me until we were side by side before the window. She was taller than the mother by 2 inches. However, when she was standing, she didn't do so in the upright way the mother did, but with a gentle curve forward, as if she, like the tall grass outside, was being pushed by the wind. She wasn't at the moment partitioned at all, and in the window light I could see the tiny white hairs around her chin. "I didn't introduce myself properly," she said. "Please call me Helen. My manners been awful." "Not at all. You've been very kind. But I'm afraid that my coming may have caused friction." "Oh, but there's always friction." "Incidentally, before you ask, the answer is yes, I do miss England. In particular, I miss the hedges. In England, the part of it I'm from anyway, you can see green all around you and always divided by hedges. Hedges everywhere, so ordered. Now look out there. It just goes on and on. I suppose there are fences somewhere in the midst of it all, but who can tell?" She became quiet. So I said, "I believe there are indeed fences. It's really 3 separate fields, fences dividing them." "You can tear down a fence in a moment," she said, "then put up another somewhere. Change the entire configuration of the land in a day or two. A land of fences is so temporary. You can change things as easily as a stage set. I used to act, you know, sometimes in decent theaters, wretched theaters too. Fences, what are they? Stage design. That's the nice thing about England. Hedges give a sense of history properly set down in the land. When I was acting, I never forget my lines. My fellow actors did forget all the time. They weren't much good on the whole, but I never forgot, not a single line. I've often thought over the years to ask Chrissy about what I saw. She comes to visit from time to time, and we always have a good chat. I've often thought about asking her, but then I stop myself. I think, no, better not. What business it is of mine anyway? I believe Rick's mother was just now wishing to discuss Rick's education. "Please call me Helen." Yes, that was it. As you see, Rick is reluctant even to raise the topic about getting you to help. I mean, I suppose I should really ask Chrissy about it first, or even Josie. I have no idea. It's so unclear, the etiquette. If one was borrowing a vacuum cleaner. But it's not like that, I know. You must forgive me. Oh, what dreadful manners. All Rick needs is a little guidance. I bought the best textbooks for him. They're from an era before children were lifted, and they were just right for him. But they all assume there's some sort of tutor lurking around. He has a genuine ability, especially with physics, engineering, all that sort of stuff. But then he comes across something he doesn't understand. There's no one to explain. That's when he gets discouraged. I used to tell him to ask Josie, but of course he gets cross about that too. So, Miss Helen wishes me to help Rick with his textbooks? Just an idea. Those textbooks would be child's play for you, right? It's just to get him through these exams, you see. He really doesn't need to get into Atlas Brookings. It's his only chance. I wasn't suggesting anything more long-term. I suppose I really should ask Chrissy first. If Rick could go to the Atlas Brookings College, that would be a good thing. In which, yes, I would very much like to assist Rick, so long as it didn't disturb at all my looking after Josie. Perhaps if Rick resumed his visits, he could sometimes bring his books with him. I could see my response hadn't satisfied Miss Helen. She went on looking at Rick out the board platform. He hadn't moved at all, then said, I suppose if I'm honest, that's not the true issue. Yes, some tutoring would help, but the real obstacle is that, for the moment, the way things stand, Rick doesn't wish to try. If only he had given it all, then I know he has such a chance, especially you see, since I have a secret weapon to help him, to give him a little extra push, this being Atlas Brookings. But he won't try, not properly. He won't try because of me. Because of you? He convinced himself he can't go away, leave me here. Of course, I can manage perfectly well, but he likes to pretend that I'm quite helpless, likely to set up all sorts of mischief in his absence. Is the Atlas Brookings College far away? A day's drive, but distance is beside the point. He's convinced an hour is about as much as he can leave me on my own. Now, how will he grow up and go out into the world if he can't leave me for more than an hour at a time? Outside, Rick began to step down the boards towards the grass. He did so slowly, as if daydreaming. And I could tell from the way he kept one arm stiffly to his chest that he was still holding Josie's drawing. As his head and shoulders descended out of the view, Miss Helen went on. What I really wish to ask you, Klara, the real request, the deeper one. Would you ask Josie to try and persuade Rick? She's the one who might change his stance. He's very stubborn, you see, and also I suspect is rather afraid, and who can blame him? He knows the world out there won't be easy, but Josie's the one capable of getting him to see this differently. Will you speak to her? I know you have a big influence on her. Would you do this for me? Mention it to her, not just this once, but over and over, so she'll exert a real pressure on him. Of course, I would be pleased to do so, but I believe Josie has already spoken to Rick in these terms. In just these terms, the current rift between them may in fact have to do with Josie expressing herself too forcefully on this topic. That's interesting to know. If what you say is correct, then it's more important than ever what I'm asking you. Josie may feel she has to relent in order for them to make up. She may come to feel she was wrong ever to take the attitude that she did. Well, you must speak with her. Tell her she must persevere. Never mind what temper tantrums he throws. Is something the matter, dear? Sorry, it's just that I'm a little surprised. Oh? Why are you surprised, dear? Well, frankly, I'm surprised because Miss Helen's request concerning Rick's appears very sincere. I'm surprised someone would desire so much path that would leave her in loneliness. And that's what surprises you? Yes. Until recently, I didn't think humans could choose loneliness. That there were sometimes forces more powerful than the wish to avoid loneliness. Miss Helen smiled. You really are a sweet one. You don't say much, but I can tell you what you're thinking. A mother's love for her son, such a noble thing to override the dread of loneliness, and you might not be wrong. But let me tell you, there are all kinds of other very good reasons why in a life like mine, one might prefer loneliness. I've often made such a choice in the past, and did so, for instance, rather than stay with Rick's father, late father very sadly, though Rick has no memory of him. Even so, he was for a while my husband, and not an entirely useless one at that. It's thanks to him that we are able to get by this way, even if we don't exactly live in splendor. Here's Rick coming back in again. Oh, he's not. He wishes to stay out there and sulk further. Rick had come walking up the plank steps and glanced towards the house, and then had sat down on top of the steps, his back turned towards us once more. I must return to Josie, I said then. It was very kind of Miss Helen to take me into her confidence. I'll do as you ask and speak with Josie. And speak with her repeatedly. This is Rick's only chance, and as I say, I have a secret weapon, a contact. Perhaps the next time Chrissy takes Josie into the city, perhaps when she next sits for her portrait, Rick and I could cage a ride. Then Rick could meet my secret weapon and hopefully impress him. Chrissy and I have already spoken about it, but all of this is useless until Rick changes his attitude. I understand. Then goodbye. I must go now. When I stepped out onto the platform, I could feel the wind blowing through the gaps of the planks more strongly than before. The views were no longer divided into the boxes, so I could see a clear single picture all the way to the horizon. Despite the altered angles, Mr. McBain's barn was where I expected it to be, although now a slightly changed shape to the one from Josie's rear window. I walked past the cobweb refrigerator to the top plank where Rick was seated. I thought he might still be angry and ignore me, but he looked up with gentle eyes. I'm sorry if my visit caused friction, I said. Hardly your fault. It often gets like that. We both looked at the fields before us, and I realized after a moment that his gaze, like mine, was on Mr. McBain's barn. You were saying something, he said, before Mom came down. You were saying how you wanted to go out to the barn for some reason. Yes, and it will have to be in the evening. It's essential to time such a trip accurately. And you sure you don't want me to go with you? It's very kind of Rick, but if there are informal trails leading to Mr. McBain's barn, it's best I go alone. It's important I don't take anything for granted. Okay, if you say so. He was squinting at me partly on the account of the sun's pattern on his face, but also I realized he was once again studying me carefully, perhaps assessing my ability to make such a journey. Look, he said eventually, I really don't understand what is this about, but if it's going to help Josie to get better, then, well, good luck. Thank you. Now I must return to the house. You know, I've been thinking about it, he said. Perhaps you could tell Josie I really like her picture, that I was grateful, and that if it's okay with her, I would like to come over soon and tell her that myself. Josie will be so happy when she hears. Maybe tomorrow even. Yes, of course. Well then, goodbye. It was a very interesting trip for me. Thank you for your useful advice. See you, Klara. Go carefully. Water? Okay. Long chapter. I think I have to separate part 4 into 2. So it's very long. Yeah, I definitely have to separate. Part 4 into 2. I don't know how to separate it. It's pretty difficult, I think. We'll see how. Let's continue. We're currently still reading part 3 of Theory of Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. The timing of my journey to Mr. McBain's barn, as I had told Rick was crucial, and when I crossed the loose stones towards the picture frame gate for the second time that day, a fear came into my mind that I had miscalculated. The sun was already low before me, and I couldn't assume the second and the third fields would be easy to navigate as the first. My journey began reassuringly, the informal trail to Rick's house similar to what it had been in the morning. This time, I had both hands to push away the grass, and as I did so, evening insects flew up. I saw more insects hovering before me in the air, nervously exchanging positions but unwilling to abandon their friendly clusters. My fear of not reaching Mr. McBain's barn in time caused me to only give a brief glance at Rick's house as I passed it, and then I was further along the informal trail beyond any point that I had been. I went through another picture frame gate, then the grass became too tall to see the barn any longer. The field became partitioned into boxes, some larger than the others, and I pressed on, conscious of the contrasting atmosphere between one box and the other. One moment the grass would be soft and yielding, the ground was easy to tread. Then I would cross a boundary and everything would darken. The grass would resist my pushes, and there would be strange noises around me and making me fearful that I had made a serious miscalculation, that there was no justifiable reason to disturb his privacy in the manner that I was hoping to do so, that my efforts would have gravely negative consequences for Josie. While while crossing one particularly unkind box, I heard around me the cries of an animal in pain, and a picture came into my mind of Rosa sitting on the rough ground somewhere outdoor, little pieces of metal scattered around her as she reached out both hands to grasp one of her legs stretched out stiffly before her. This image was in my mind for only a second, but the animal carried on making its noise, and then I feel the ground collapsing beneath me. I remember the terrible bull on the walk up the Morgan's Falls, and how, all its probability, it had emerged from beneath the ground, and for a brief moment, I even thought the sun wasn't kind at all, and this was the true reason for Josie's worsening condition. Even in this confusion, I was convinced that if I could only pull myself through this kind of box, I would be safe. I had also been aware of a voice calling to me, and I now spotted an object, shaped like one of those overhaul man's traffic cone, placed in the grass little ahead of me. The voice was coming from behind this cone, and when I tried to move towards it, I realized that it was in fact two cones, one inserted into the other, allowing the higher one to perform a rocking motion, perhaps to draw the attention of passers-by. Klara, oh, come on, over here! I came closer, then realized that these weren't cones at all, but Rick, holding back the grass with one hand and reaching the other towards me. Now that I had recognized him, I had even more incentive to move towards him, but my feet sank further, and I knew if I attempted another step, I would lose balance and fall deep into the ground. I knew too that despite Rick appearing to be within touching distance, he was not in reality. So, because of the fierce border separating our boxes, even so, he continued to reach out towards me, and where his arms crossed into my box, it appeared elongated and bent. Klara, come on! But I accepted now that I would soon fall into the ground, that the sun was angry with me, and perhaps unkind, and that Josie was disappointed in me. I began to lose orientation even as Rick's arms grew longer and more crooked till it touched me. It stopped me from falling, and my feet steadied a little. Okay, Klara, this way. He was guiding, almost carrying me across. Then, as I was in a kind box, the sun's generous pattern over me, and my thoughts found order once more. Thank you for coming to help. I saw you from my window. Are you okay? Yes, everything is fine again. The field posed more problems than I expected. I suppose these little ditches can get tricky. I have to say, from up there, you look like one of those flies that buzz around blindly on the window pane. But that's unkind, I'm sorry. I smiled and said, I feel so foolish. Then remembering, I looked up to check the sun's position. This journey is so important, I said, looking at him again, but I estimated incorrectly and now I won't get there in time. The grass was still too high to see Mr. McBain's barn in the distance, but Rick was looking straight in its direction, a hand shielding his eyes, and it occurred to me that he was tall enough to see it. I should have left the house earlier, I said, regardless of the awkwardness when I returned, but I was still waiting till Josie fell asleep and to allow Melania, housekeeper, to believe I was going on another errand to Rick's house. I thought there would be sufficient time, but the views were more complex than I imagined. Rick was still looking towards Mr. McBain's barn. You keep saying that you won't get there in time, he said. What exactly did you want to be there? Just the sun is arriving at Mr. McBain's barn, but before he disappears for his rest. Look, I don't understand any of this, and I appreciate that you can't let me in on it for whatever reason, but if you want, I'll take you there. That's very kind, but even with Rick's guiding, I believe it's now too late. I wouldn't guide you, I'll carry you, piggyback. We've got a way to go yet, but if we hurry, I think we can make it. You do that? You keep saying that it's important for Josie. So yes, I would like to help. This is over my head, but then I'm used to that. If we are going, we have to hurry. He turned and lowered himself into a crouching position. I understood that I was to climb on his back, and I did so, clasping my arms and legs around him, and he began to move. Now that I was higher, I could see better the evening sky and the roof of Mr. McBain's barn ahead of us. Rick moved confidently, crashing through the grass, and since his arms were occupied holding me, most of the impact was taken up by his head and shoulders. I feel sorry about this, and that there was so little I could do myself to push back the grass. And then I looked past Rick's head and saw that the sky had become divided into segments of irregular shapes. Some segments were glowing orange-pink, while the others showed pieces of the night sky, sections of the moon visible in the corner of the edge. As Rick moved forwards, the segments kept overlapping and displacing one another. Even as we passed through another picture frame, after that grass, instead of being delicate and waving, came towards us like flat shapes, possibly made of heavy boards, such as the sort used for street advertising, and I feared they would cause Rick injury as he plunged into them. Then the sky and the fields were no longer in segments, but one broad picture, and Mr. McBain's barn was looming before us. The uneasy thought that had been growing in my mind could now no longer be set aside. Even before Rick had come to my aid, I had started to wonder if the sun's resting place really was inside the barn itself. If of course I had been the one, not Josie, who had first suggested such a thing. That time we had gazed out together from the rear window, so many such error was entirely my own. Certainly there was no question of Josie having misled me at any stage. Even so, it was a discouraging thought that the sun was about to descend not into the place I was making such an effort to reach, but somewhere further away still. What I now observed obliged me to accept that my fear was justified. Mr. McBain's barn was unlike any building I had seen. It resembled the outer shell of a house that man hadn't yet finished. There was grey roof with facing triangles in the usual manner, supported to the left and right by walls of a darker shade. But apart from these sections enclosing the roof, the structure had no walls, front or rear. The wind, I knew, was even then blowing right the way in through with barely any obstruction, and the sun, I saw, had now fallen behind the barn structure and was sending its rays through the rare opening back out to us as we approached. We had meanwhile come into the clearing not unlike the one upon Rick's house was built. There was grass here, but it had been cut perhaps by Mr. McBain himself, just above feet level. The cutting had been performed skillfully so that a pattern could be seen, weaving towards the barn entrance, and because the sun was now shining straight through the barn, its shadow was spreading across the grass towards us. Though it seems discourteous, I signal urgently to Rick by tightening my arms and legs. Please stop! I whispered to his ear. Stop! Please let me down! He lowered me carefully, and we both gazed at the scene before us, although I now had to accept that the barn couldn't be the sun's actual place. I allowed myself an encouraging possibility that regardless of where the sun ultimately settled, Mr. McBain's barn was a place he made a point of calling at last things each evening, just as Josie always visited her aunt Sweet before retiring to bed. I'm so grateful, I said, keeping my voice low despite the outdoor acoustics. But from here, it's best Rick leaves me and I go alone. Whatever you say. If you like, I'll wait for you here. How long do you suppose you'll be? It's best Rick returns to his house. Miss Helen will worry. Otherwise, Mom will be fine. I think I'll better wait. Remember how it was going before I came onto the scene? And your journey back will probably be in the dark. I'll have to manage. I'll have to manage. Rick has been too kind already, and it's best I enter alone. As it is, standing here like this, it might be already be stealing too much privacy. Rick looked again at Mr. McBain's barn, then shrugged. Okay, I'll leave you at it, whatever it is that you have to do. Thank you. Good luck, Klara. I mean it. He turned and walked back into the tall grass, and soon I could no longer see him. Once alone, I began to place my thoughts fully on the task before me. It occurred to me that if a passerby had stood directly before the barn even 5 minutes earlier, they would have been able to see not only the evening sky through the rear, but the continuation of the field, but also a lot more of the barn's shadowy interior. But now, with the sun rays coming straight towards me, I could make out only some blurred box-like shapes, stacked one on top of the other. And the thought returned to me with more certainty than ever that, even accounting for the sun's great generosity, what I was about to do carried risk and would require all my concentration. I heard behind me the breeze in the grass, and the cries in the distant birds, and the ordering of my thoughts. I walked across the cut grass towards Mr. McBain's barn. The interior was filled with orange light. There were particles of hay drifting in the air like evening insects, and his patterns were falling all across the barn's wooden floor. When I glanced behind me, my own shadow looked like a tall, thin tree, ready to break in the wind. There were some curious features about my surroundings. On first entering the barn, I had encountered such sharply contrasting divisions of brightness and shadow that my sight had taken a few moments to adjust. Nevertheless, I had established quickly that the block of haze whose shape I had noted from outside were now to my left, stacked one on top of the other to form a kind of platform, one as tall as my shoulders, upon which passerbys could climb or even lie down rest. But the hay blocks had been stacked so as to allow gap between them and the wall behind, perhaps so that Mr. McBain could gain access from that side. Peering over the hay platform, I now saw fixed to this wall and running all along it the red shelf from our store, complete with ceramic coffee cups displayed upside down in a line. On my other side, to my right, where the shadows were at the deepest, I saw a section of the wall almost identical to the front alcove. In fact, I felt sure that if I went over to it, I would discover amidst the shadow an AF standing there proudly at the spot where, no matter what else was said, customers were most likely to look first. Also, on my right, though not as far over to the alcove, was the only item in the barn that could be counted as a furniture, a small metal fold-away chair, now in its open position at present, bisected by diagonal separating its brightly lit area from its shadowy one. This chair, too, was reminiscent of the chairs manager kept in the back room and occasionally unfolded in the store, except that its paint had started to flake, revealing patches of metal underneath. I decided that after some reflection that it wouldn't be discourteous to sit down on this chair while waiting for the sun. When I did so, I fully expected to see revised picture of my surroundings due to the altered angle, but was surprised to find that everything had instead became partitioned, and not just into the usual boxes but into segments of irregular shapes. Inside some segments, I could see some certain parts of Mr. McBain's farming tools, a spade handle, the lower half of a metal ladder. In another segment was what I knew to be the mouths of two plastic buckets placed side by side, but owing perhaps to the difficult light conditions, they were presented simply as two intersecting ovals. I knew the sun was now very near me, and although I thought at times I should stand up as I was receiving customers, something else suggested I would steal less privacy and be less likely to cause annoyance if I remained seated. So I aligned my own shape as closely as I could, as I could with that of a fold-away chair and waited. The sun's shaft became more pronounced and more orange, and I even thought these shafts might be causing pieces of hay to become loose from their blocks and floated into the air, for there were now many more drifting particles in front of me. Then the thought came to me that if I was correct, and the sun was now passing through Mr. McBain's barn on his way to his real resting place, I couldn't afford to be overly polite. I'd I'll have to seize my chance boldly, or all my efforts and Rick's help would come to nothing. So I gathered my thoughts and began to speak. I didn't actually say the words out loud, for I knew the sun had no need for words as such, but I wished to be as clear as possible, so I formed the words, or something close to them, quickly and quietly in my mind. Please make Josie better, just as you did, beggar man. I raised my head a little and saw alongside the fragments of farming tools and blocks of hay a section of a traffic signal and a part of the wing from one of Rick's drone birds, and I remembered the manager's voice saying, "That's not going to be possible," and Boy AF Rex saying, "You're so selfish, Klara." And I said, "But Josie is still a child and she has done nothing unkind." And I remembered the mother's eyes scrutinizing me across the picnic bench at Morgan's Falls, and the bull staring angrily as though I had no right to be passing before his field, and I realized I may have angered the son by intruding in this way just when he was needing his rest. I formed an apology in mind, but shadows were now even longer, so that were I to spread my fingers out before me, I knew their shadows would reach right the way back to the entrance of the barn. And it was clear the son was unwilling to make any promise about Josie, because for all his kindness, he wasn't yet able to see Josie separately from other humans, some of whom had angered him very much on account of their pollution and inconsideration, and I suddenly felt foolish to have come to this place to make such a request. The barn filled even more intensely with orange light, and I saw again Rosa on the hard ground wearing an expression of pain, reaching forward to touch his outstretched leg. I bowed my head right down and curled myself into the smallest shape I could within the shape of the folded chair, but then I remembered again how any chance to make an appeal would be fleeting, and so, finding courage, and said in almost words, forcing them through my mind in a split moment, "I understand how forward and rude I have been to come here. The son has every right to be angry, and I fully understand your refusal even to consider my request. Even so, because of your great kindness, I thought I might ask you to delay your journey for one more instant, to listen to one more proposal. Supposing I could do something special to please you, something to make you particularly happy. If I could achieve such a thing, then would you consider in return showing special kindness to Josie, just as you did that time for Beggarman and his dog?" As these words moved through my mind, something distinctly changed around me. The red glow inside the barn was still dense, but now had an almost gentle aspect, so much that the various segments into which my surroundings were still partitioned appeared to be drifting amidst the sun's last ray. I spotted the lower half of the glass display trolley. I recognized its casters, rising slowly until it became obscure behind a neighboring segment, and though I raised my head and looked all around me, I could no longer see any trace of it at all of the terrible bull. I knew then that I had gained a vital advantage, and couldn't waste even a tiny moment, and so pressed on, no longer forming half words, for I knew I didn't have the time. I know how much the sun dislikes pollution, how much it saddens and angers you. Well, I've seen and identified the machine that creates it. Supposing I were able to somehow find this machine and destroy it to put an end to its pollution, would you then consider in return giving your special help to Josie? The inside of the barn was getting darker, but it was a friendly darkness, and soon the segments had gone, leaving the interior no longer partitioned. I knew the sun had moved on, and rising from the fold-away chair, I walked for the first time over to the back opening of Mr. McBain's barn. I saw then how the field continued into the mid-distance until it met a line of trees, a kind of soft fence, and behind it the sun, tired and no longer intense, was sinking into the ground. The sky was turning into night, with stars visible, and I could tell that the sun was smiling towards me kindly as he went down for his rest. Out of gratitude and respect, I continued to stand at the back opening until his last glow had vanished into the ground. Then I walked through the dark interior of Mr. McBain's barn, leaving the same way I had come. The tall grass moved gently around me as I re-entered it. Getting across the fields in the darkness and was a daunting prospect, but I was so encouraged by what had just occurred, I felt hardly any fear. Even so, the unevenness of the ground reminding me of the dangers in front of me, I was pleased to hear suddenly Rick's voice somewhere close by. "Is that you, Klara?" "Where are you?" "Over there, over this way, to your right." I ignored your advice about going straight home. I moved towards the voice. The grass fell away and I found myself in a clearing. It was as though a vacuum cleaner had created it, a small, circular area in which the grass was again shoe height and the night above had a curving slice of the moon. Rick was sitting there, apparently on the ground, but when I came nearer, I saw he was seated on a large stone that was almost submerged into the earth. He looked calm and smiled at me. "Thank you for waiting," I said. "Just self-interest. Suppose you got stuck out here all night and got damaged. I'll be in deep shit for bringing you out here." I think Rick waited out of kindness. I'm very grateful. "Did you find what you went in for?" "Oh yes, at least I believe so. I believe there's now reason for hope. Hope for Josie. Hope that she'll get better. But first I must perform a task." "What kind of task? Perhaps I can help with it." "I'm sorry. I'm not able to discuss this matter with Rick. Tonight, I believe an understanding was achieved. A contract, if you like. But if it might be jeopardized if I speak about it freely." "Okay. I don't want to put anything at risk. Still, if there's anything you think I could do." "If I may speak frankly, the most important thing Rick can do is try hard to go to the Atlas Brookings College. Then, Josie and Rick can remain side by side, and the wishes expressed in the kind picture will remain possible." "God, Klara, it's obvious Mom's been working on you. She makes it sound so easy, but you have no idea what it takes for someone like me to get into a place like that. Even if I did, what happens to Mom? I just leave her out here on her own?" "Miss Helen may be stronger than Rick supposes, and even if Rick isn't lifted, he has special talents. If he tried very hard, I believe he could be accepted by the Atlas Brookings College. Besides, Miss Helen has said that she has a secret weapon to assist him." "A secret weapon?" Some creep she knows who helps run that place? An old flame of hers? I don't want any part of it. Look, Klara, we should be getting back. You're right. We've been out for a long time. Miss Helen might be concerned, and if I could return before Josie's mother comes in, that would avoid awkward questions. Alright. We still have about 11 pages to go. It seems like very little, but it's actually quite a lot. Let me take a quick break, okay, guys? Okay, I'm back. Oh, yeah, let's continue. The next day, when the doorbell rang towards the middle of the morning, Josie seemed to guess who it was and, leaving her bed, hurried outside onto the landing. I followed her, and as Rick stepped past Melania, housekeeper, into the hall, Josie turned to me with an excited smile. But then she made her expression completely blank as she went to the top of the staircase. Hey, Melania, she called down. Do you know who this weird guy is? Hello, Josie. Rick, looking up at us, had on a cautious smile. I heard this rumor we might be friends again. Josie seated herself on the top steps, and though I was behind her, I knew she now had on the kindest smile. Oh, really? That's strange. Wonder who put that out there. Rick's own smile became more confident. Just gossips, suppose. By the way, I really like the picture. I put it in a frame last night. Oh yeah? One of those frames that you make yourself? To be honest, I used one of mom's old ones. There's so many lying around. I took one of picture of the zebra and put yours in there instead. Great swap. Melania, the housekeeper, had walked away into the kitchen, and Rick and Josie went on greeting each other from either end of the staircase. Then Josie must have given a signal for them. They both moved quickly at once, and she rising to her feet, he reaching for the banister. As they went together into the bedroom, I remembered Melania's housekeeper instruction from before and followed them in. And after a while, that it was like old days with me on the button couch facing the rear window, and Rick and Josie behind me laughing about silly things. At one point, I heard Josie say, "Hey Rick, I'm wondering if this is the correct way you hold one of these." In the reflection, I saw her holding up a table knife like behind that knife left behind from breakfast. Or is it more like this? How would I know? Oops, sorry. The, uh, probably didn't hear it, but my hair blower just started to act up. Anyway. Okay. How would I know? I thought you might, being English and all. My chemistry professor said that you hold it this way. But what does she know? How would I know either? Why do you keep saying I'm English? I've never actually lived there, you know. It was you yourself, Rick. 2, 3 years ago, you kept insisting how English you were. I did. Must have been a phase. Oh yeah, went on for months. You were like, pray this, pardon me that. That's why I thought you might know about this knife thing. Why would an English person know any more than anyone else? A few minutes later, I heard Rick was moving around the bedroom, and he said, "You know, one reason I like this room so much? This the place smells of you, Josie." What? I can't believe you say that. I meant in an entirely nice way. Rick, that's so not what you can say to a girl. I wouldn't say to any girl, I'm just saying it to you. Excuse me? So I'm not a girl anymore? Well, not any girl. What I'm trying to say that all I'm saying is that I haven't been here for a while, and I've forgotten some things about this room. The way it looks, the way it smells. Jesus, that's so offensive, Rick. But there's laughter in her voice, and a quiet moment Rick said, "Well, at least we're not cross with each other anymore. I'm glad about that." There was further quiet, then Josie said, "Me too. I'm glad too." Then she added, "I'm sorry I kept saying stuff about your mom and all. She's a good person, and I didn't mean any of that. And I'm sorry about being sick all the time, making you worry." I saw Rick in the glass taking a step closer to Josie, put an arm around her, and then after a second he put his other arm around her too. Josie let herself be held.
though she didn't raise her own arms in return the way she did to Mother when they say goodbye. This so you can smell me better? She asked after a while. Rick didn't reply to this, but he said, Klara, are you there? When I turned, they had pulled apart slightly and were both looking at me. Yes? Maybe you should, give privacy, as you always say. Oh, yes. They watched as I came off the button couch and went past them. At the door, I turned and said, I always wanted to give privacy. It's just that there was concern about hanky-panky. They both looked puzzled, so I went on. I was instructed to ensure against hanky-panky. That's why I always remain in the room, even during the bubble game. Klara, Josie said, Rick and I are not about to engage in sex, okay? We've got a few things to say to each other, that's all. Yes, of course, then I'll leave you. With that, I walked out onto the landing and closing the door behind me. Over the days that followed, I often thought about the cooting machines and how I might be able to find and destroy it. I experimented in my mind with various pretexts on which I could accompany the mother into the city and once there, be left on my own devices for a sufficient amount of time, but none of this seemed at all convincing. Josie, noticing my frequent inattentiveness, would say things like, Klara, you're zoning out again. Maybe you're low on solar. I even considered taking the mother into my confidence, but rejected this option not only because of the danger of angering the son, but also because I felt mother would neither understand nor believe in the agreement I had entered into. But then an opportunity presented itself without any initiative on my part. One evening, an hour after the son had gone to rest, I was standing in the kitchen beside the refrigerator, listening to its comforting sound. The ceiling lights hadn't been switched on, so I was there in the semi-light coming from the hallway. The mother had returned late from her office not long before, and I had come down to the kitchen to allow her privacy with Josie up in the bedroom. After a time, her footsteps came down the staircase, then towards the kitchen. Her silhouette appeared in the doorway, making the kitchen even darker. She said, Klara, I want to give you a heads up. After all, this involves you. Yes? Next Thursday, I have taken time off work. I'm going to drive Josie down into town, and will be staying overnight. We were just talking about it. Josie has an appointment. An appointment? As you know, Josie was in the process of getting her portrait done. The time she came by your store, that's why we were in town. There's been a long break on account of her health, but she's stronger now, and I want her to go in for another sitting. Mr. Capaldi's been very patient and kept everything on hold. I see. So, will Josie be required to sit still for a time? Mr. Capaldi is good at not tiring her. He's able to take photographs and work from those. Even so, he needs her to come in from time to time. I'm telling you this because I want you to accompany Josie on this trip. I think she will like you with her. Oh yes, I would like that very much. The mother stepped further into the kitchen, and now I could see just one edge of her face illuminated by the hall light. I want you, Klara, to be with her when she goes in to see Mr. Capaldi. In fact, Mr. Capaldi is keen to meet you. He takes a special interest in AFs. You could call it his passion. Is that okay with you? Of course. I look forward to meeting Mr. Capaldi. He may have a few questions for you to do with his research, because, as I say, he's fascinated by AFs. You won't mind that? No, of course not. But I believe a trip into the city would be good for Josie now. She's a little stronger. Oh, good. Oh, and we may well have passengers in the car. I mean, our neighbors are needing a ride. Rick and Miss Helen? They have some business of their own in town and she doesn't drive anymore. Don't worry, there's room enough for all of us. You won't have to travel in the trunk. I heard more about this trip the following Sunday. Not only Rick but his mother visited the house during the early part of the afternoon. I had once more stepped into the landing to give Rick and Josie privacy in the bedroom, standing beside the banister rail
gazing down onto the hallway, I could hear Mother's and Miss Helen's laughter coming from the kitchen. I couldn't hear their words well except when one or the other was exclaimed something loudly. Once Miss Helen called out, "Oh, Chrissy, that's quite outrageous!" and laughed. A little later, I heard Mother, who also with laughter, say it loudly, "It's true, it's absolutely true." Because I couldn't hear many words or see Mother's expression, I wasn't able to make a reliable estimate. But my impression was that Mother was at the time the most lacking in tension I had witnessed since my arrival. I was trying to listen more closely when the bedroom door opened and Rick came out. "Josie's in the bathroom," he said, coming over to me. "Thought it's only good manners to come out here in the meantime." "Yes, that's considerate." He followed my gaze over the rail, then nodded down towards the adult voices. "They always got on," he said. "A shame Mrs. Arthur isn't around more. It's good for Mom, having someone to talk to like that. She always cheers up around Mrs. Arthur. I do my best, but I can never get her to laugh that way. I suppose me being her son, it's hard to relax. Rick must be a wonderful companion for Miss Helen, but as you can see, if you weren't with her, she'll be able to find other companions to laugh and talk with." "I don't know. Maybe." Then he said, "Look, I've been thinking this all over. What you said the other night, and I've agreed now. I promised my mom that I'll try my very best to get into Atlas Brookings." "That's wonderful." He was now leaning over even more, perhaps trying to catch words, and I was concerned he might topple over because of his greater heights, but then he straightened, resting both hands on the rail. "I've even agreed to meet this man," he said, lowering his voice. "Her old flame." "The secret weapon person?" "Yeah, Mom's secret weapon. He reckons he can pull some strings for me. I've even agreed to that. But this might result in the best solution. The wishes in Josie's kind picture could come closer to reality. Maybe they are talking about that down there right now. How I've come round to Mom's way of thinking after all this time. Maybe that's what they are finding so amusing. I don't think they are laughing unkindly. I think Miss Helen must be happy because of Rick's promise, and hopeful." He was silent for a moment, listening to the voices below. Then he said, "I think we're getting a lift to the city with Josie and Mrs. Arthur." "Yes, I know, and I've been asked to come too." "Well, that's good. Then you and Josie can both give me moral support, because I'm really not looking forward to begging this character for help." Josie's voice suddenly called from the bedroom. "Great! So everyone deserted me." Then, as Rick turned back towards the door, "Hey, Klara, you can come back in here too. It's okay. We're not performing any big sex acts." 2 days later, I was to hear yet more about the trip to the city, and this time in a surprising way. It was a rainy weekday with no visitors. Josie had gone into the open plan after lunch for an oblong tutorial, and I had gone up to the bedroom. I was sitting on the floor surrounded by magazines when Melania, housekeeper, appeared in the doorway. She stared down at me, her face neither kind nor frowning, and I thought she had come to reprimand me for the times I had left Rick and Josie unattended in the bedroom despite her warnings about hanky-panky. But she stepped further inside and said in a kind of harsh whisper, "AF, you wish help Miss Josie, right?" "Yes, of course." "Then you listen. Ma'am taking Miss Josie City Thursday. I say I want to go with them. Ma'am reply no. I say yes. Ma'am still say no. She say no because she see them well eye on to something. She say she want take AF instead. So you listen. You keep damn good eye, Miss Josie in city. Hear me?" "Yes, housekeeper." I also spoke quietly, though there was no chance Josie could hear us. "But please explain further. What is it you're worried about?" "Listen, AF. Ma'am take Miss Josie see Mr. Capaldi. Portrait guy. That Mr. Capaldi one creep son bitch. Ma'am say you good observe. Then you damn good observe Mr. Son bitch. You want help Miss Josie. We same side." She glanced back at the door, though there were no sounds of
Josie emerging from her lesson downstairs. But, housekeeper, isn't Mr. Capaldi's just wishing to paint Josie's portrait? Paint portrait. But housekeeper, sorry, I was wrong in that one. But housekeeper, isn't Mr. Capaldi just wishing to paint Josie's portrait? Paint portrait, fuck. AF, you watch close, Mr. Sunbitch, or something bad happens, Miss Josie. But sure, I lowered my voice even further. Surely the mother would never. Ma'am loved Miss Josie, but Miss Sal died and messed ma'am up bad. Get me, AF? Yes, then I'll observe carefully as you say, especially around Mr. Capaldi. But what you but about now, AF? But if Mr. Capaldi is as you say, will it be enough for me to observe? The way Melania housekeeper was staring down at me, a passerby might have thought she was threatening me, but I now understood she was filled with fear. How fuck I know enough? I won't go with Miss Josie. Ma'am say no way. Take AF instead. Can't figure it out. So you stick close, Miss Josie, especially when Mr. Sunbitch around. You do your best, AF. We same side. Housekeeper, I said. I have a plan, a special plan to help Josie, and I'm not able to speak openly about it. But if I can go to the city with Josie and her mother, I may have the opportunity to carry it out. Plan? Listen, AF, you make things worse. I fuck come dismantle you. But if my plans work, Josie might become strong and well. She'll able to go to college and become an adult. Unfortunately, I'm not free to tell you more, but if I can get to the city, I'll have a chance. Okay, main thing, AF. You keep good eye Miss Josie in city Thursday, hear me? Yes, housekeeper. And AF, your big plan. If it makes Miss Josie worse, I come dismantle you, shove you in garbage. Housekeeper, I said, smiling confidently at her for the first time since coming into the house. Thank you for this talk and for your warning. And thank you for trusting me. I'll do everything I can to protect Josie. Okay, AF, we same side. There was one further incident of note during this period before the trip to the city, and it was one that provided me with an important lesson. It occurred deep in the night when I was brought awake by Josie making a noise. The bedroom was dark, but because Josie disliked complete darkness, the blind covering the front window was 1/3 raised, and the moon and stars were making patterns on the wall and floor. I looked towards the bed and I saw Josie had created a mound shape where, with her duvet and a humming voice that was coming from within it, as if she was trying to remember a tune, and hadn't wished to disturb the rest of the house. I moved closer to the mound shape, and then I was standing over it, touched it gently. Immediately it erupted, the duvet disintegrating into surrounding darkness, and the room became filled with Josie's sobbing. Josie, what's the matter? I kept my voice low but urgent. Has the pain come back? No pain, but I want Mom. Get Mom. I need her here. Not only her voice loud, it was as if it had been folded over onto itself, so that two versions of her voice were being sounded together, pitched fractionally apart. I've never before heard her produce such a voice, and for a second became hesitant. She brought herself up into a kneeling position, and now I saw the duvet hasn't disintegrated after all, but was in a large ball behind her. Get Mom! But your mother needs rest. I keep my voice in a whisper. I'm your AF. This is exactly why I'm here. I'm always here. I didn't say I need Mom. But Josie, there was a movement behind me, and I was pushed aside so that I almost lost balance. When I recovered, I saw before me, on the near edge of the bed, a large shifting shape, made additionally complex by the patches of blackness and moonlight moving over its surface. I realized the shape was the mother and Josie embracing. The mother was dressed in what looks like a pale running clothes. Josie in her usual dark blue pajamas. As well as their limbs, their hair had become mingled, and
and then their shape began gently to rock in a way not unlike when their goodbyes became extended. Don't want to die, Mom. I don't want that. It's okay, it's okay. The mother's voice was soft, at just the same level as mine. I don't want that, Mom. I know, it's okay. I moved quietly away from them towards the doorway, then out onto the dark landing. I stood on the railway, looking at the strange patterns on the ceiling and the hallway below, and turned over in my mind in the implications of what had just occurred. After a while, the mother came quietly out on the bedroom and, without looking my way, turned into darkness of the short corridor that led to her own room. There was now silence from behind Josie's door, and when I returned to the bedroom, the duvet and the bed were orderly, and Josie was sleeping, her breaths peaceful again. And that is all for today. That is all for today. Yeah, part 4 is going to be difficult because I don't think I can read the entire part 4. So I have to find a way to like divide part 4, and it's proving to be a bit difficult. I'm like, because they don't have chapters, but they have like I don't know. Okay, let me see. Okay, so it's like 30 37 pages. 37 pages. Thing. It's gonna be a bit difficult to separate into 2. Yeah, it's difficult. But I have no choice. It's really long. I don't know. If like part part 3 is about 2/3 of part 4. So for me to separate part 4 into 2, that would require me to be difficult. So 49 pages to 40 pages. I think I have to do that. There's like no way I can read, because like even today it's like way past like the time that I was going to like finish reading. Thank you, Marvelous. Thank you for. Oh, I cannot believe it that you are sub for so long, but this is your first time chat. Oh my god! Thank you so much for subbing. Every little thing helps, guys. Yeah, part 4 is gonna be difficult, and I don't think I can do it this week. It's gonna be a very, 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 very busy week for me. I mean, it's gonna be busy week on like from tomorrow onwards. So I won't be able to have the time to stream as I used to. I used to stream like 3 times a week, which is like crazy. But that's also the reason why I had such a huge library of like books that I've read on stream that everyone can go and listen to the previous streams. If it weren't for the time when I was very hardworking and I read like books after books after books like for weeks, yeah, that was like the burnout, I think. But it wasn't just that; it's just many other things in life. I'm gonna start getting like more busier next week onwards, and I mean, tomorrow onwards, not next week. Sorry. Even if I stream, it's gonna be like in the evening, so there's gonna be some adjustment, I guess. Well, when I first started streaming, the whole idea was that I stream in a
time frame in the hour where other people are at work, and they probably like, you know, wanted something to be in the background, like a radio or something to listen to. So I wanted to provide that for service to people in the office, or people who are working or in like commute or something. But it's like and then it gets later and get later and get later. Now I'm streaming closer to the evening, and yeah, I'm I think next Tuesday is definitely gonna be a stream, but I don't know if there will be any stream in between now to next Tuesday. So I can't promise anything. It's really depends on how I'm feeling, and yeah. I'm gonna go have dinner now because I'm hungry. So thank you so much for listening today. Thank you, Macros. Thank you for your sub. Seriously, it was like I'm surprised that you never say anything and just sub for like 11 months. I really appreciate it, and I thank you so much for your support. It really helps a lot in the long run. Okay, if you make it all the way to this point of the video, if you're if you are watching this or listening to this on YouTube, thank you for staying with me and listening to me until the end of part 3 of Kazuo Ishiguro, Klara and the Sun. We will tackle part 4 in the weeks to come, okay? And thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for supporting me by just subscribing, you know, anything. Or like, you know what's great? If you can like hit, and it's so cringy whenever I do this, like, I don't know, subscribe to me, ring the bell, wherever, and tell your friends that, you know, there's someone doing this thing that's a bit interesting maybe for you. I don't know. Spread the words. And I'll see you guys soon. Okay, I'll be back. Don't worry, I'll be back somehow, some way, in another. I'll see you guys soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening, watching today. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Have a